The following is rated not safe for work. It contains strong language, adult situations, and lots of spoilers. Discretion is advised.
In the criminal justice system, cinematic-based offenses are considered especially heinous. The dedicated attorneys who investigate these villainous films are members of an elite squad known as the Reels of Justice. These are their stories.
Order, please, order. The Reels of Justice is now in session. Judge Big Ben Haslar are presiding. We all rise for the Honorable Judge Haslar. Be seated. Welcome to the Reels of Justice. Today we're hearing the case of The People versus Dune 2021, a sci-fi adventure movie about the young heir of a noble family who gets caught up in the war for control over a desert planet where the universe's most valuable resource is mined. For those of you unfamiliar with our court proceedings, we are here to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. As always in this courtroom, films are to be considered excellent until proven awful, and the burden of proof lies upon the prosecution to prove beyond the shadow of a reasonable doubt that this film is guilty. Mr. Schlender, an animal caught in a trap will gnaw off his own leg to escape. What will you do? Let's find out with your opening statement.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to prosecute without rhythm to not attract the ire of Isaac Arthur. So here we are.
Very well.
But first, I need everyone wake up, rise and shine. I know we just watched Dune, so we're all a little groggy. So I'm going to lead the court in some minor calisthenics to get the blood flowing. 15 jumping jacks. All right, here we go. Hands all the way over your head, Ben. Maynard, you don't need to be spinning. Great form, Isaac. Ryan, that's a somersault. Okay, now that we're all awake, let's talk about Dune. In what we can only hope promises to be the last interpretation of Frank Herbert's novel, the audience is once again treated to a snooze fest. Clocking in at well over 2 hours, we are treated to the first half of the story of the first book. And now, to me, what is insane is that all the major plot points are executed with the same deftness as they were in Dune 1984, but at nearly the same length for half the action. In my case, we'll walk and talk about where this extra time went. Winning a paltry 6 Oscars in categories that do not reflect competent storytelling or acting, we see why Dune is more confection than cinema. And possibly my most salient point, the soundtrack is nothing compared to Toto's in '84. That was a masterpiece.
Thank you, Mr. Schlender. Mr. Arthur, you fight when the necessity arises, no matter the mood. Please enlighten us on how you plan to fight today.
Well, in the end of the day, Dune 2021 had to do what very few films could do, which is recreate one of the best books ever written, one of the most popular science fiction books ever written, and also one that's already been adapted into film or made for TV film twice now, with at least a third one planned. And it is true, the soundtrack is not as good as the original David Lynch version.
Yes!
So it is unbeatable in that category, but it is a very good soundtrack. It is magnificent cinematography. It's not just cheap CGI in front of a camera. There's real-life, actual, useful, practical effects, and the execution of all the visuals is just amazing. At the same time, we still have that core storyline, that amazing storyline about a distant future that is just breathtaking and amazing, and they finally got around to recruiting some amazing actors to do the roles too. It's just amazingly well directed and executed at almost every level. So defending it would be very easy.
Wow. I do believe you're right. But let's see how Mr. Schlender proceeds with this first exhibit.
The audience can't see it, but I'm unloosening my tie. All right. Now everything Isaac said about how this is a reinterpretation of the novel, this is all true. So Dune is a series that has a lot of baggage with it, and that's good and bad, right? And I find it hard to believe that someone could walk into this 2021 feature without some preconceived notions. But, and here's a weakness, it's also clear that director Denis Villeneuve thought this as well, as the movie is woefully short on exposition. Now, do we need a floating princess lady to spell it all out for us? Maybe. The stuff that is the stuff that is spelled out for us is seemingly walked back immediately. One example: we are told at the beginning of the movie that spice is harvested in the evening hours. Yet we see a harvester in broad daylight. The temperatures are supposed to be so oppressive that the buildings need to be sealed. Yet we see the main characters walking through the day and the desert rather freely. Only one holding a parasol, mind you. So Dune is largely about being a built and lived in world, but it seems to be confused right out the gate in this film, which is very jarring, especially if you're going into this movie not very familiar or intimate with Dune. You know, you almost need the buy-in of having seen the '84 movie or have read the book, possibly the early 2000s series as well.
Mr. Arthur, was everyone wearing SPF a million sunblock on Arrakis?
That would be my assumption, yes. I would say, principally, though, there is kind of an assumption that you're going to get more out of it if you've read the books or seen the previous ones there. There is some tribute to the previous iterations. At the same time, they seem to be aiming for the goal of, here's a self-contained movie, or at least the first half of a self-contained movie, that you can enjoy in of itself, and it does what so often is missing from these. It sets up so that the book is not in contradiction to the film, other than a few minor deviations, but rather the book is a wonderful supplement that people can go enjoy as the great classic that it is, not at odds with the film itself. And I really didn't feel like there was too many substantive deviations from that, or too many breaks with what you say would call realistic sci-fi. But yes, it does seem like they maybe got a bit of their harvesting messed up there as a concept. And I did appreciate somebody was actually walking around with an umbrella.
A very nice one too.
So so the movie might pass the book report test depending on how part 2 comes out. I would like to talk about the Fremen for a moment, because in this movie I don't think they are portrayed very compellingly. From Javier Bardem being the only one with an accent to Zenyatta, the chick. Her monotone delivery for every single line does not move the needle. You know, Aquaman tells us that they're the fiercest warriors he ever faced, but we see them job to the Emperor's guards, to Timothy Shamalama Ding Dong, and they just always are losing every fight there. And why are they so fierce? Where's this quote-unquote desert power, which they say almost as many times as they say evil dies tonight in Halloween 2. Just pulling that out of nowhere, you see.
Which no one's going to hear for months.
Well, possibly. So at the start of the movie,
the
Fremen say the planet is being ravaged. But guys, it's a desert. It already is ravaged. But there's no ravaging going on here. They're farming sand. They're doing them a favor. There's less sand on here. And then they say that they are oppressed. But the fact is they live comfortably in their snitches and ditches with advanced technology. And their numbers are woefully underestimated by the Harkonnen. They say, there's like 50,000 on here, you know, like we're not, but it turns out there could be millions. And I'm sure we'll hear more about that in the second one, right? And, you know, I could keep going on that, but let's even now look at another important group in this movie, the Bene Gesserit. They are given very short shrift, despite how very important they are, and despite the overwhelming, I dare say, oppressive 2.5-hour runtime. It would have been nice to see a broader conversation of how humanity has evolved into witches and space babies that we don't even get to see in this movie. What a missed opportunity.
Well, you say missed opportunity, but when they put the long prologue on the director's cut, or maybe it was the author's cut of the original film, many people did not like that very long introduction to how they got there. Plus, we can say that it wasn't much of an ecology. You know, you're ravaging a desert, but at the same time, the point of the book and the film is that there really is an ecology they're creating. And of all the adaptations, this one has thus far done best in showing that ecology. We see that mouse, for instance, that critical mouse that the main character takes a name after, something that pretty much gets skipped in the other adaptations, has had ears that actually are big enough for it to get condensation out of, and it collects water from its own ears. That's a neat little thing there, especially compared to the very sad CGI mouse we see in the 2000 miniseries.
The 2000 miniseries isn't on trial here, but I will say this idea that Arrakis or Dune is being ravaged and pillaged and beaten. I mean, this isn't like the rainforest being chopped down at like 500 yards a day or whatever the statistic is. I mean, this is a desert. They're sweeping up sand with giant robots. I just don't think that the Fremen have it as bad as they would have you to believe. It's Fremen propaganda, really.
Jeez.
You know, I know I might be pro Harkonnen, but I think knowing
Your bias is showing.
If you live on DD Prime, you definitely wish you lived on Arrakis. It's very clearly in all the adaptations a much crappier place to live.
No, that's the other thing too. I mean, obviously they're only fighting over it. Like they let them, like, so both houses, right, Atreides and Harkonnen, they let themselves get baited by the Emperor into this fight. And the reason we know about it is just because they keep talking about it. We don't get to see the Emperor. We don't get to see the Navigation Union, even if they are just wearing their garbage bags, right?
Question from the bench. You were complaining about this thing being too long, and now you're wanting it to be longer to explain some of these things?
No, I wanted it to use its length intelligently. Something like we saw in like the Snyder cut of Justice League. That movie was 4.5 hours. Very little of it wasted. This is 2.5 hours, and we only hit a few points. Now, I am going all in. I told you, prosecuting without rhythm. So, look.
Well, I'm meant to be biased here, so Mr. Arthur, do you have a rebuttal to the use of its time?
Well, we will leave Zach's side of his cut behind for the moment because it had its ups
well played, yes.
You know, we will probably end up with a longer director's cut of this film at some point, and maybe we'll fill some other things in. But, you know, when we look at so many things that people criticized in the Lynch film back in the day, or in the miniseries, was that so much is done for exposition. Well, this is a book that has so many internal monologues and so much data. It's one of the few books I know that has a glossary on it and actually is a bestseller. Very few books with glossaries have best-selling status. This is the, you know, almost always listed as the number 2 to Isaac Asimov's Foundation, or sometimes the number 1 science fiction series for decades, right? And it had a glossary. So you know it's a good book, but still there's so much compact information. And I think they are saying here, let's give you bits of it, let's give you a piece of it, let's show, not tell. And they did a lot of that. You know, the sheer size of guild ships, the landos, all those things, we're just shown them. We see the tiny little thing emoji for one of these ships that arrives at Caladan or Arrakis. This tiny little ship that becomes this huge drop ship the size of a skyscraper, as we actually get to see it zoomed in and landing. There they show, don't tell what the problem is. They show how terrifying these worms are, rather than, as in previous cases, discussing them in detail. We have a lot more of that than we got with other exposition formats before, and in so many other adaptations of science fiction to the screen, where they either skip it or they try to cram it in there in long, lengthy details. Not that I want to talk, given that's my own style.
Hey, you're talking about you're talking about mega cities on the moon, Isaac. That's important work. You know, sweeping up sand on Arrakis it's a different. If I'll continue, Your Honor, here. Yes, my next exhibit, I just kind of want to, I touched on it a bit. I want to take a moment to compare this to the 84 movie, which this court found guilty, mind you. So both movies managed to hit on the same major plot points. It starts with hinting at the power of Paul, the main character. It hits on the spice wars with the Atreides versus the Harkonnen. And then we get to Paul's and his mother's like exile, where they team up with the Fremen. Now that's as far as the 2021 movie goes. It basically ends with Paul and his mother getting accepted by the Fremen, and then they say it's only the beginning at the end of the movie, and it's like, ugh. All right. So what I find so interesting is that 84 was able to do all of this and take a stab at the second half of the novel in the same runtime. So the time that we have in the 2021 movie, where's that being spent? We get these long shots, we get tacked on scenes that don't really matter, like the aforementioned Harvester scene. We've got these kind of long monologues, particularly like the Harkonnen Baron just rambling on and on at the table, and then
but no halt plugs.
Hey,
for that alone.
no sting in a cod piece. I mean, guilty. Are we all right? Okay,
agreed.
So there's a lack of urgency, I feel, in the 2021 feature that at least the 84 movie was able to capture, if not always successfully, but they were able to. You felt the stakes a bit more. like kind of like to speak to this lack of urgency too. Like during the Harkonnen attack, like James Brolin bravely walks towards the enemy. Like they're all just taking their time. It's like your ships are blowing up. So what is truly disappointing too is that we do have this long runtime. We do have this huge budget, and we are so zoomed in on what is just happening to Paul when we could have been using this sense of scale, which I agree with Isaac, like seeing the ships and everything. That's really cool. But we get this throwaway line about how the Harkonnen have attacked every major population center. It's like, guys, show that. You have the fleet of ships. You have stormtroopers raining down in the city. Like, that would be really cool. We would feel the stakes. It would feel like a war. What it just kind of felt like now is just like a little operation, and it didn't have any kind of gravity. I mean, not to get
what they're leaving out there is that the only major population center is that city.
Well, that's true, but they make it. But like, still though, it could have been a bigger, more epic scene, especially because like now I know we have the spoiler warning at the beginning for the movie, but as far as Dune goes, this might spoil possibly things that could happen in the second one. We know that there's going to be a humongous war with the Fremen as like the tip of the spear for Paul's army, basically going through the rest of the novel. So like we know that stuff's coming. We get that teeny little vision in the future where they're all wearing their white suits, but it's not big enough. It's not epic enough, and it just feels small. So we're just told that we have to pull for the House Atreides because he happens to be the guy getting the most screen time. So it just doesn't. It's like I don't know why I'm supposed to be feeling for this. It just doesn't feel like it's that high of stakes.
Well,
it's impossible to root against Oscar Isaac, right?
I don't know.
So you've got things in the film that we're saying. Well, in the original film, they made the Baron so over the top evil that there was no doubt about who the good guy was.
Yes.
But this one, we have so many bits where they've done it better than the old film. And having been the defense on that sadly losing battle for defending that last film, it was a close run thing, and yet so many things were done better. I would have loved to have seen more of Thufir Hama in this film other than with the umbrella, but at least we didn't see him with a cat that he had to milk. I would have loved to have seen Feyd-Rautha in this film, but at least we didn't see him in a codpiece. I loved that we got to see the Baron as what seems like a more believable human villain than one that was flying around pointing people's heart plugs out. He seems genuinely intimidating when we're seeing him in other scenes, as opposed to just loathsome and disgusting. Right? This is a scary, worthy bad guy, as opposed to the poetic version from the miniseries, which was still an improvement over the really disturbing one from Lynch. So many of the characters we see better. Yes, could we have seen Gurney Halleck move a little bit faster across that battlefield? Perhaps, but he wasn't doing it while killing a dog.
Another demerit. You're absolutely right. So I'm going to be wrapping up here soon, Your Honor. So I just like two more things, and they're both very small. So knowing where the series is going kind of helps with some of the issues I've brought up, but we have no guarantees about this film series and how it will progress because we don't know if they're going to get past part 2. We don't know if there's going to be Dune Messiah. So we are being asked for a huge buy-in, just like they did in '84 and just like they did in the early 2000s, and none of those paid out. So if these other movies don't happen, or if they happen poorly, it's just going to make everything I said in this movie really stick out as being even worse. And finally, my last absolute point, that hack Hans Zimmer must have Jeff Porcaro rolling in his grave. Toto was robbed of their Oscar in '84, and to award it to the Zimmer fart machine is truly and gravely insulting. I rest my case.
And I've been notified that Toto's checked you as cleared, Mr. Schlender, so you're good to go. Mr. Isaac, you may present your case.
I would say that, I want to say Toto did a better job with it, but not because this one was bad, just because that one was so epically good. There was a very haunting soundtrack to the incarnation. I would also say that, we didn't just get an empty blank check for previous iterations of Dune. We can look forward to the next sequel because, as an example, Children of Dune for the sequel to the miniseries was actually quite good compared to the first one. So perhaps they can actually get even better for the next one. More than anything else, though, I just say this film has so much to it. It takes the storyline of one of the greatest classics of science fiction, and it doesn't adulterate it. What relatively few changes we have are actually, in many cases, either neutral or improvements, right? We see the Sardaukar on their own planet, something we barely get a glimpse of even throughout the entire Dune series, and the adaptation of them, those little effects we get to see, like the kind of Mongolian throat gargling chant, the upside down crucifixions that seem to be going on their planets, give a kind of extra life to them as not like just comic book evil or guys running around in what appear to be hazmat suits or really fancy garb in the miniseries, but they're just disturbingly, viciously like Viking / Mongol / tough. And they cut through. We get to see the Harkonnen forces going into the Atreides forces, and the Atreides forces seem very strong. Then the Sardaukar cut through them, and it seems plausible. They give us a background on these guys that makes them seem that tough. And so when they're fighting the Fremen, and it's even odds, or the Fremen may be winning, or the Sardaukar may be winning, it seems to actually build up the Fremen a little bit. We see a magnificent portrayal of Duncan Idaho, who has been sadly neglected in all the previous adaptations, but is probably the biggest of the characters in that series besides Paul, because he keeps reappearing. Wonderful job there. There are so many little things that are done right in the film that they more than make up for some places they're hanging. They all like any film, a few weaknesses. We're trying to do that adaptation, but there's just so few of them compared to the strengths. Again, the visuals are amazing. The casting was perfect. Right? Beast Raban done so well. Normally a side note character who shows up at all. We have such a good job by all the actors in this one, such a good job on the practical effects and the visuals, and just a great job directing overall. This is an amazing adaptation, and if the sequel is even half as good, we can call it a complete series. But in many ways, to find it guilty at this stage would be just inappropriate. We have a half-done piece. We know the next one is coming. Even though it hasn't under filming yet, they've decided to go ahead and take that gamble and look to pay off. This has been critically acclaimed, which is great, but also loved by the fan base. And that's a rare combination. And all in all, I think we just have to say at this point in time, this film is, absolutely innocent. It is a magnificent film, and it deserves to be already listed as one of the greatest sci-fi films of history.
But Isaac, don't you think they could have explored the Emperor's motives a bit? That we don't get to see anything, and we just find out that he's stacked against House Atreides, and they don't really go into why. And it's just to set up that kind of flaccid action sequence with the white troops landing and stabbing people to death. And hey, you know what? There's something I forgot to bring up. Remember, they're using a laser to cut through the Fremen door? Now, Isaac, I know you're not a witness here, but you are still under oath. What happens in Dune? What happens in Dune when a shield gets hit by a laser? Please tell me.
The Horseman effect causes a minor atomic explosion. Thus,
exactly. So why are they shooting lasers through a door where they can't see the other side?
And again, that's an adaptation thing. They may explore more in the future. That actually have that go off in the book. They leave a laser behind to get a shield behind to get blown up by a laser to make the Harkonnens a little bit more careful chasing them down, because they did use lasers while they were hunting for Paul in the book. So Duncan Idaho leaves a shield behind to blow up. But that might be explored more in part 2, and at the very least, it's different than inventing entirely new sound weapons for the series as opposed to what the book had.
Modules.
I probably won't argue the sound wave point, but I still think it was grossly reckless of the supposed best warriors of the world to be shooting lasers into a spot they couldn't see.
It really indicates their willingness to take out the enemy even at the cost of their own lives.
Oh my god! Yeah, maybe. Well, then just blast their own shield with it. That will get them.
They took a lot of
Mr.
risks.
Schlender, you did bring up in your opening statement the acting. Did you have a rebuttal to that specifically?
Well, okay, so I do think all the Fremen portrayals I just didn't think were very convincing. Javier Bardem has an accent. Zenyatta's voice is just monotone the whole time. We have Batista as one of the main bad guys. You think that's going to be cool because Batista's huge. He's like 6'4", like 280, all muscle. He's a strong guy. He doesn't punch one guy in the face. He doesn't even throw a guy over his head. What? I know, right? They just have him in there. I don't know, because he's bald and he looks good in makeup. They wanted to cash in on the Guardians of the Galaxy thing.
That's all you need, baby.
If
that doesn't work, I don't have a chance.
oh, crap. I forgot who the judge was. I forget you're wearing a wig for this. No, but that's the other thing, too. Is like this movie is kind of trying to straddle that Marvel line, and I just think you can't really be half in, half out in these effects kind of features. And when you have those kind of actors that do have over-the-top personalities and you're not able to use them and exploit them properly, everyone comes across as pretty dull.
Well, we
So,
do get a good line out of him. I mean, when he's talking to the Bayon and he starts screaming about how it's their planet, it's believable. His moment of frothy at the mouth seems plausible. And we have to remember in the book series, Beast Man is not known for being a good fighter, though he probably was. His brother Fade is the one who is considered to be the magnificent fighter. Paul is a magnificent fighter.
It's that's true. So why cast Batista then as in that role?
I had originally thought it was going to be Jason Momoa when they were casting. I was like, oh, Jason Momoa, they must be planning him as Roban. That was a good switch around. I did not know he'd be a good Duncan Idaho. He was amazing, and I didn't think Batista was a good choice for Beast Roban.
Yeah, so that's all I've got to say about the acting, Your Honor. I think the jury can definitely make up their mind on that.
Thank you, Prosecutor. Mr. Isaac Arthur, did you have any other exhibits to bring forth?
No need. This is an easy case. Victory is...
You got it made in the shade?
I love it.
All right, very well. Both sides have rested their case. Mr. Schlender, you may present your closing statement.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. See, I, for one, respect your time a lot more than this movie did, so I will keep my closing brief. The movie plods along with an unengaging story that is punctuated with listless acting. Herbert's world is shrunk down in such a way that the stakes are impossible to feel. And lastly, you all know what I'm going to say. There's no Toto here. Yeah. Thank you.
He's got one card and he's going to play it, baby.
It's a big card.
It is a big card. Isaac Arthur, you may present your closing statement.
Fundamentally, I feel like this movie was just great at so many levels and only has room to improve with the second one. It's going to be even better, I think, when that sequel's ready, and that will help to expand it. But until that second one's there, we cannot possibly find it guilty because it's a partial walk. And on the very same, grounds, we have to wait to see then before we could actually convict it of being guilty. Though I cannot imagine how we would find it so, because it's such a magnificent film all on its own. The spice must flow. You must not find this film guilty.
Thank you both. Members of the jury, Mr. Robb Maynard, Mr. Big Ben Haslar, and Mr. A Great Man Doesn't Seek to Lead. He is called Ryan Luis Rodriguez.
That is not the line.
In this case. Now you may... It's up to you to determine if this film is guilty of being a bad movie. The bailiff will escort you to the deliberation room to render your verdict. People keep thinking I'm talking about this movie when I try to flirt. How you doing? I don't understand it.
I bet bailiff gets lots of dates.
All right, fellas. So first, Ryan's nickname is Fear is the Little Death That Brings Ryan Luis Rodriguez. That's his actual nickname.
That seemed, I don't know. Mine was nicer.
They're all nice, okay? So Ryan, what do you think at first?
I love this movie. I was not expecting it to actually be a success. I was expecting it to be good, but I was not expecting it to be warmly embraced, given how kind of volatile the fandom is around properties such as Dune. But as much as I love the movie, I still think that splitting it into two movies, it has the issue of the fact that it doesn't have an ending. The last half hour is a little anticlimactic, and it just feels like for all the setup they were doing, they didn't bother to create a natural transition point between both movies. So it just kind of ends, and it's like, but we'll be back. This is only the beginning. And
if you do know like the story, then you're like wondering, like, is this where they're going to end it? Is this where they're going to end it?
Yeah.
Is this where they're going to end it? Oh, this is where they ended it. Cool. I guess
for a whole hour, it's like they're running across the desert and flying across the desert. It's like, oh, we're going to lead to something big, and then it's kind of like a brief little tete-a-tete, and then that's it. And it's like, we're done? Really?
And they literally...
Yeah, they probably should have ended it with like the Harkonnen invasion or something like that.
And they literally ended it with the line, this is just the beginning.
Yeah, that pissed me off. That
cringy.
Legitimately pissed me off.
Yeah, so Big Ben?
I very much did enjoy Mr. Schlender's case. I didn't expect I would, because I loved this movie. I saw it in the IMAX. I was blown away by these visuals, like Isaac Arthur was saying, the giant spaceships, this world just like feels so real. They dive into like all these little aspects of it. I loved it, and then I watched it on the smaller screen for here, and I liked it again even more because I was less blown away visually, but I was able to focus more on the story of this novel that I loved. But Schlender did have a lot of points that are true. There is a lack of urgency. It does cut off there. Zendaya, who she's not quite there. The heat, yeah, that's there. But those are nitpicks. It doesn't quite compare to like just the good points about this thing that that has made this franchise stand for so long.
I didn't
And I
really
will say, I hate Jason Momoa, but I love him here.
Why?
I don't know. I don't get it.
What does
expected to hate him too? Yeah,
I like Isaac brought that, but what does Momoa possibly do in this movie that's any different from everything we've seen from him before, including Aquaman? He's just being Jason Momoa. He's just reciting his
he's
lines.
A little friendlier.
Oh, he's friendly.
He's a little less.
So, I mean, I really didn't think any of these
performances
were particularly good at all. None of
them.
Not one of maybe Skarsgård, maybe, but even him, you don't get very much. And
Leah Kynes, you didn't buy her, the environmentalist, or
she's the changeover
the environmentalist.
Is that the person
the one who's like leading them through the desert and like telling him how to wear a still suit and all that sort of thing?
I mean, she didn't. Nobody trips over and does a bad job, but nobody does a good one. I just feel like they're there, and you could pick up and replace most of those performers with other performers, and you wouldn't really lose anything. Even Zendaya, and then of the names that you are interested in, we talked about how Momoa's part is bigger, but maybe he has 10 minutes of screen time total. Nobody's in this movie for very much except for Timothée Chalamet and his mom, Rebecca Ferguson. Okay, you know what? I do like Oscar Isaac, but he's not really doing anything different than you see him do in a lot of roles. But I guess I did like.
But it doesn't kill the movie, right? It doesn't make it bad.
No. I'm just saying I didn't think any of the performances stood out as a strength. The strength of the movie is its visuals, its atmosphere, the actual world they're able to craft for you on the screen. It all looks great. Schlenzo's points stand true about how the movie seems to forget about the world it's set up itself.
None of that bothered me. Literally, none of that bothered me.
Okay. I mean, it's not really a nitpick. It's just I didn't think any of the performances were standout and memorable.
No, I agree on the performances not being standout, but yeah, it didn't kill it. But the visuals, it doesn't tell. I do feel like the length is good. The only real flaw,
about the show
main flaw is its sense of urgency.
About the show and doesn't tell, I feel like it tells a lot. Like they have to tell you the Emperor has a problem with this House Atreides, right? We don't ever get to see the Emperor
naturally though.
talk.
It's not like this exposition like Princess Irulan was doing in the first one.
It's a little bit closer to that though. Like we could have had a conversation. Like we could have seen the conversation between the Emperor and Harkonnen, the Baron. And actually seen him, tell him do this, because I didn't understand after that he had a problem with Oscar Isaac. I was like, well, why did he put him in charge there? Oh, he wanted to kill him. There's got to be easier ways to kill him than this, especially to jeopardize this planet. These are problems with the novel, I think, that I have. Anyway, I just think it's kind of a silly story. Sorry, Isaac. But yeah, visually that's its strengths. It looks gorgeous. But I'm gonna say it's boring. It is so long and boring. And I thought the first Dune was boring and I fell asleep in it. And this is now gonna be twice as long. So I hope there's a lot more action in part 2, because part 1's like a lot of politics and it's just plods along.
So you think it's basically it's Star Wars Episode 1 to Star Wars? Yes.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't call the 80s version Star Wars. I wouldn't call it New Hope necessarily. But at least it's a faster clip. But I do think that this story in general suffers from that Episode 1 problem, where it's like you get a little bit too deep into the weeds of the politics of this universe, and they're a little bit subtle. And I don't want to watch intergalactic C-SPAN. It's not that interesting to me.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to get a lot out of Dune Part 2.
Well, if they're going to ride some worms, Like let's ride some worms. Let's shoot some magic voice. Let's get something going here.
They got to say something for the second part, man.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I hope part 2 brings that up, because you don't get very much of it in part 1. It's mostly a lot of intrigue. Let's let someone else talk. Big Ben.
Well, I'm just going to lock in. This is not guilty. I adore this film. I adored it even more the second time. And the points against it, while true, are nitpicky. So it's a not guilty for me, a strong one.
Ryan, I'd like to hear your not guilty verdict now.
Okay, well, here you go. Not guilty.
Would you like to elaborate more?
No, I mean, yeah, the aesthetics of it, I mean, the music, the effects, the atmosphere, it blows Lynch out of the water. It's not close to what Jodorowsky was going to do, which is that's the big disappointment for me, is after seeing Jodorowsky's Dune, is that's the kind of movie that I wanted to see, which, again, that would be 6 hours long, and it would be an acid trip with Pink Floyd music, but I think that's kind of why I want to see it, because it sounds so inadvisable. But
there's only too much you can take.
Yeah, there's it just seems like that it seems genuinely dangerous to make a movie like that, which is kind of why I enjoy it. But I think that what the movie sets out to do, it accomplishes. So I'd have to say it's a not guilty.
All right, cool. So I had a lot of bad things to say about it, because to me, I think you guys have it on a bit of a pedestal that I can't get to. Because it did almost put me to sleep too, just like the first Dune. And I don't fall asleep in movies.
You say that all the time, but then you're like, "Oh, Superman Returns put me to sleep."
Okay,
Dune put me to sleep.
And Superman Returns put me to sleep. Like, there's a good reason for that.
I know you said it at least 2 or 3 other times. I just can't.
You know what didn't put me to sleep? Halloween Kills. But
months from now.
But I can't deny that it is good at what it's good at. You know, I know all the categories it got nominated for and won, and it is really good on that. I mean, the technical visual stuff is flawless. I mean, they've crafted a great world that you feel like you could walk through the screen and exists. It's great. I just, maybe the story needs a little sprucing up. Maybe a few more robots.
It's just not your cup of tea.
It's a giant monster.
It's not my cup of tea. That's true, right? It's not my cup of tea, but that doesn't make it bad. So I am going not guilty. So let's get out there and tell that very handsome judge.
That's been disputed, sir. Mr. Foreman, have you reached a verdict?
That's me.
It is you.
Your Honor. In the case of The People versus Dune 2021, we find the defendant not guilty of being a bad movie.
No! The verdict is so rendered. Thankfully, after its long nap it started in 1984, the sleeper has awakened. I hereby order the entire Dune Part 2 team to step on it. Give me that sequel. I need that spicy goodness in my life. Court is adjourned.
This is Mumbly Mumblerson reporting to you live from outside the Reels of Justice. Dylan J. Schlender, would you care to share your thoughts on the jury's verdict?
Let me tell you something, Mumbly. Let me tell you something right now. That jury, they don't know what they're doing. Because I tell you what, they all fell asleep during this movie. I know they did. It's boring. It's bland. It's a movie about sweeping up sand. I mean, what are we doing here? Okay, I'll see you later, Mumbly. I gotta go. I can't do it right. I gotta go.
Thank you. Now calm down. Calm down. And here comes Isaac Arthur. Excuse me, can we get a word on how you feel about today's verdict?
We are smug in all victory, but we salute the valiant effort by the prosecutor to find such an obviously magnificent movie guilty. And we actually heard a lot of interesting things at the deliberations of the jury that are very good points. We hope the director will correct in version 2.0.
Thank you very much. I agree. You are smug. That's all we have from the courthouse today. Let's go back to the studio for post-trial analysis.
Oh my God! Well done, Isaac. And actually, so now that court's done, I actually like the movie quite a bit too. I'm really looking forward to the sequel. Yeah,
Dune, the 84 version has long been my favorite film, and I mean second favorite film after Blade Runner. But this one instantly replaced. I feel like was with the possible exception of the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe kind of taken as a whole for that Infinity Wars run, for instance, I would say it's the best sci-fi movie I've seen probably since Sunshine came out. And that one, Sunshine, minus the last 30 minutes. I was like, you need a director's cut of Sunshine.
I like the monster chase.
Last 30 minutes.
You recommended, I believe, the first time you were here.
Sunshine's
I like
great.
I like the monster chase. I mean, now that the thing's done, I can admit that, I still didn't really care for this movie. But I wonder, is it because it's been cannibalized by so many other things, right? Like, the story seems to me a little paint by numbers, but it's because it came out in the 60s and a lot of other people ripped it off.
Oh, sure. They're all flaws with the book. They really are. I mean, he corrects some of them, but it's before the era of things beyond word processors and before the era where you had anybody editing it or looking it over besides the editor themselves. So you have things like in Messiah, for instance, somebody's got a missing arm and he's missing the opposite arm a few pages later. They're all problems. We have a universe in which they have easy access to gigantic ships, insane amounts of resources, and yet they can't land the most plentiful molecule in the universe after hydrogen itself, water, on a planet where that's going to be in any solar system in huge amounts. And he fixes that later in the series by saying that the sandworms have a version of themselves that contain water, but at the same time it's definitely a retcon.
And didn't it say like the water kills the sandworms too?
Yep.
Later on.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're terraforming the planet.
And it just seems
there's a lot going for the series.
This planet that has this most incredibly valuable resource that you need to keep this stranglehold over the universe that you have is just not the battlegrounds I would I choose to put my enemy on and possibly jeopardize that planet. I'm doing it anywhere else but Arrakis.
Yeah. Now, actually, there's a thought that had come up in one episode we done Battle for the Moon. We were talking about, if you go off and send somebody out to run a space colony for you, that is one way to possibly exile them, but then you might try to sabotage that effort because those things might be cash cows because that person might come out as like the governor of the moon as a massive political force. So there was a history of people getting exiled after things that are threats to the leadership, and then you decide that you need to dispose of them too because they end up doing a really good job.
And I think the reason you exile them to Arrakis is because the stakes immediately are so high. So if someone's messing up the spice production, the navigation union's going to be against them. The major houses are going to be against them. It makes them a very convenient enemy for literally everyone.
Yeah, so and it's his cousin too. I mean, this is his fourth cousin once removed. He's trying to get out of political
I did not know that. I wish they would tell me more about it.
Oh,
more Game of Thrones in space.
It's a throwaway line where he says like, "Oh, this is a great spread you have here, cousin." When he meets him.
All right.
And there are bits of those pieces in there, but I mean, I wouldn't say it's like Game of Thrones in space because Game of Thrones is written afterwards, but they're probably both inspired to some degree. I mean, usually we say Dune is based off Lawrence of Arabia, but Game of Thrones is based off the War of Roses, but I'd say that Dune probably gets some inspiration from that too. It's very much a political book. It's very much a political thriller, and so you can't really remove that from it, but has it got some science realism things? Oh yeah. The other two big classics, Ender's Game and Foundation, have the same problem. A lot of the really good sci-fi novels, there's something in the basic science of it that is just so fundamentally flawed that if you examine it, it kind of falls apart. But the only reason you ever would is because it's so good and has so many sequels that people spend, hours and hours defending it or prosecuting it. That's the
Jules Verne got so much right.
So you look at people talk about how you make a lightsaber or things like how realistic the battles are. That only happens when you have a blockbuster.
Yeah. So I was like, Isaac, you're in charge of harvesting the spice. A smart guy like you could come up with a better contingency plan than flying in like a helicopter thing to lift the harvesters up. I mean, there's got to be a better way to defend against the worms, right?
I mean, given that they don't actually know what the worms are in terms of their production with the spice, and they're involved that you think that using nuclear bombs against them would work. Yeah. But
put some rocket thrusters at the bottom of the harvester, like you have spaceships.
Well, yeah, you have so many ways to potentially handle that situation. One of which, of course, is that you just make the harvester able to fly.
Yes.
Since you got them going out flying,
or have it explode in spikes or something, like a pufferfish.
Because the dim worm
against the sandworms, if you just wound them to drive them off. But exactly. There was a fair number of things like that. You say, well, the Fremen do all these cool types of terraforming adaptations. Why don't they just use greenhouses? You don't have to have a floor. You could make the floor out of something hard too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that kind of thing there that doesn't quite fit. But then again, as I say, the same with all these. People don't care what Thanos' movies is about until that becomes a blockbuster movie and they pick them apart, right? You don't care about the realism of these things until the thing is done so well, except in cases where it's just like, we could sit here doing Battlefield Earth all day long, but
let's do it.
No.
All right, Battlefield Earth.
Only if I'm not the one defending it.
I've defended it before, and I'll defend it again.
And you lost before, and you'll lose again.
I'll go down swinging, man.
All you could ask for.
So, Isaac, what's been keeping you busy lately? What have you been up to?
Oh my! Of things that I've been working on most recently, I've been busy rewriting our original episode 0 to do a presentation at a space conference on, and it's normal scripts are not short either. They're like 20 to 30 minutes long. This one's thus far only already about 3 times longer, so it's been a exhaustive writing process. But we're doing a compendium of all the huge megastructures in science fiction, and that should be coming out in late May, early June. But in terms of episodes coming out, we got one coming out tomorrow. Not that anyone's going to hear this tomorrow, being in this case the 31st of March.
Last week.
Yeah, last week.
Hearing it last week.
On programmable and small battle.
But what do you got coming out? What is the at least the newest
next
episode?
one? Oh, okay. Then the next one that will be coming out after that episode would be Self-Growing Habitats in Space Bases, followed by Multi-Species Empires, our Sci-Fi Sunday special for April 10th.
Oh, no, that's cool.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. Was High Life was one of those sci-fi movies, right, Ryan, where he kind of got a greenhouse in space?
Yes. Yeah, great movie.
Yeah. See, I know him sometimes.
Or The Martian.
Now, Isaac, are you going to be doing any more speaking tours? I know you did that Japanese space conference through the RAND Corporation recently. That was really cool.
The ones I just referenced were both actually in reference. That was the self-growing habitats one that actually came up as an episode discussion with some of the folks working with NASA Glenn up here. They're actually building these micro blocks to be doing a project in Namibia. I got to talking with the guys in preparation for the Bioscene Biomimicry Conference toward the end of May, and then I'm rewriting the Megastructure Compendium one to be a presentation for the International Space Development Conference, which I'm keynoting at the end on the very last day, actually, on May 29th, Sunday, May 29th, down in Arlington, Virginia. So doing a few more of those now that COVID is done, though I still most enjoy remote because it's so nice to be able to surround doing all this in my pajamas.
Yeah.
Oh no, I hear that, man. Yeah, no, that was a really that was a real cool speech. I know that we were able to stream it. Is this one going to be streamable too? Do you know?
I'm not sure about the biomimicry one, but the other one, yeah, we're actually doing as normally I do a live stream on Sunday afternoons, the last Sunday of the month, and since I was going to be talking then, we went ahead and scheduled it for the exact same time, and just going to live stream my talk instead of me doing my normal live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really
When
cool.
are we going to get a real Death Star?
One of the megastructures I was writing up for that is the Niko Dyson beam, a gigantic Death Star.
Perfect. We won't call it a Death
super
Star.
villain would be interested in
It's a
this. I got my
Star
eye on you.
Yeah, we won't call it a Death Star, just
Niko Dyson beam, yeah.
It's a peace-loving Death Star.
People hear Dyson, they think about that vacuum. It's nice and peaceful. They like it.
Yeah, exactly. They like it.
The worst thing ever was my second episode, my first official episode for the show. I came up with a concept called the Dyson Dilemma. In codes of a dilemma of the Fermi paradox having to do with Dyson spheres, without knowing either two things. One, Freeman Dyson was also very famously known not just for Dyson spheres, but for his analysis of the prisoner's dilemma of game theory. And two, Dyson vacuums actually had an ad about Dyson dilemma of how you should be picking that actual vacuum cleaner. Thus meaning that the Dyson dilemma is one of those occasions where I've coined a term. It's the first one I did that I coined that never will ever catch on.
Yeah,
I definitely stick to it anyway.
Yeah, I can see your fans now. Like, Isaac's come so far from his vacuum videos. This is great.
Yeah. Throwing some weird search engine optimization problems there too. Now, Isaac, we always ask for a recommendation from our guests for movies you think people should see. So, what is a movie people should check out?
Well, certainly isn't Battlefield Earth.
Come on.
Literally any other movie.
That's going to be the quote. It'll just be a question mark. It's like, not
Have you
Battlefield
guys?
Earth.
I mean, going back for classics, good classics, Forbidden Planet.
Nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome movie.
No, that's a great
Leslie
recommendation.
Nielsen before he was funny.
Yeah, a very different world to be watching him in, but it's the first appearance of Robbie the Robot too. So,
Yeah, is he the most famous robot?
probably, yeah. Maybe, I mean, some exceptions like
Rosie
Commander
the robot
Data.
from the Jetsons. I think she's up there.
Rosie
up
is
there,
up
yeah.
there.
R2D2.
Data from Star Trek.
Mm.
I'm sure there's a bunch of other
R2D2 's a droid.
Yeah,
I don't-
C-3PO. Yeah,
I don't know if that counts being a droid.
I think it would have to. Yeah.
Wait,
Probably
Isaac,
all
is there a
droid.
difference between a droid and a robot?
Here you go.
Kind of, because an android is actually supposed to be a robot that looks like a man,
Oh,
and that's where the part of that comes from.
But
It's
R2D2
android.
isn't humanoid, so
Yeah.
What's
It's
going
kinda-
on there?
it's kind of like from Cyborg, which used to have nothing to do with metal pieces and had to do with people being drugged up and medically altered.
Yeah.
Wait a
Which is
second.
kinda
Are you
sucks.
saying that George Lucas is inconsistent with his language? Now, I
Oh,
don't
yeah,
know
yeah.
if I believe that.
Oh, but
Yeah,
in the,
android means male robot. Gynoid means female looking robots, and
Oh.
So
another
C3
droid is a non-existent word, but it's there now.
okay.
That
Interesting.
ain't going away.
Used to be in some science fiction book with a glossary in the back of it.
Now,
Well, as they said
so-
on Ultra, when it says that's a made-up word, they're all made-up words. So.
Someone had to make them
All
up.
words are made up.
Oh, words are made up. I love it. Oh man, that's great.
Oh, that is a good one. But Forbidden Planet that's a great movie. It's kind of what? It's kind of like a remake. It's kind of it's like Shakespeare's The Tempest. Yeah,
it's The
right.
Tempest.
Oh yeah, I would
Yeah.
definitely say that would be the inspiration for that. So
Yeah, I think it's considered like a loose adaptation of it.
non-coincidentally, and I hadn't really been thinking about the time, one of my favorite, if not my favorite, play by Shakespeare. I named my cat after that one. So,
You named your
Your
cat
cat
Tempest?
Frost. Oh,
Right,
my.
making the same joke. Dylan, you were unsuccessful lawyer. What is your recommendation?
That's true. Oh, you're gonna love this
Hit
recommendation.
him while he's
Maynard.
down.
So recently, Big Ben's compiled all of our recommendations into a fantastic letterbox page. So
Oh,
Make
I
sure
was going
you-
to plug that.
You
I'm
still
sorry.
can.
You still should. But imagine my horror and not seeing the best sandworm movie of all time listed. And that movie is Tremors. Released in 1990, we get to see Kevin Bacon and Fred Ward lead a small desert town in a fight for survival against giant sandworms. The movie makes no mistakes. All the characters are engaging, the stakes are real, and it is infinitely rewatchable. Enjoy the comedy, enjoy the action, and of course, enjoy the really cool monsters. Who cares where it's streaming? You should buy it.
Now there's a perfect movie.
I agree. It is so good. It is
11
so
out
good.
of 10. 0 flaws.
Yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. Would not
Nope.
change a single thing in that movie. It is so good.
Big Ben, you were the judge, right? So what is your recommendation?
I was. Yeah, Dylan stole my thunder about about the letterboxed.
What's
We
it
have
called?
two of them,
list,
Ben.
but
We
they're-
have two.
They're
of
all
them.
there. You can go on a letterbox and search for recommendations of justice, and you will see everything that we've ever suggested. It's quite an eclectic list, but it'd be the perfect thing to sort of play, movie roulette with, to
Yes.
just get something out there that someone should see. Just get
10
your
to
random
midnight.
number generator and go to town. And one of them you'll see is my recommendation. Dune's Academy Award experience reminded me a lot of this one, which is Gravity. Just like Dune, it didn't win Best Picture, but it was lauded for its visual effects, score, editing, and so on. And it's another film where I believe while you can see it at home, on the big screen, it just puts it on a whole other level. It's probably not as scientifically perfect as there could be, because you have to make a concession or two to tell a story about an astronaut hopping from space station to space station in order to find her way home. But I still find it remarkably believable, and those visuals are still eye-popping. If you didn't see it in theaters, you did miss out, but you could still catch it on HBO Max for still quite an enjoyable ride.
And
Isaac
by
Arthur.
visuals, you mean Sandra Bullock in her underwear.
No,
They popped to my eyes.
you're overselling it.
Isaac, what do you think of Gravity?
I thought it was
The
actually
movie.
a pretty good movie. I really did like it. I know it got panned a lot, but good film, good effects. A little too much heavy breathing on it, and the actual example of Kessler syndrome there is not terribly realistic, but more realistic than most sci-fi films.
And what do you think about Gravity, the concept?
The concept.
I believe that it's
theory.
kind of a fake concept and a pseudo force that doesn't hold up well under general relativity.
Aha!
Exactly
Take that,
what I always
gravity.
say. I always say that. Oh.
I know. Wow, he really brought gravity down to earth, didn't he?
Oh, man.
Oh, boo! Boo!
Oh, the jokes.
These
You
are
should
the
drop that joke, Maynard.
These are the jokes.
So
Well, it's one of those puns where it's bad, but you wish you thought of it first.
yeah, that's
that's
my whole shtick. Ryan, what's your recommendation?
In honor of this week's trial, I couldn't decide what to recommend. I originally landed upon Jodorowsky's Dune, but since it's not streaming anywhere, I've decided to instead recommend my favorite Denis Villeneuve film. And I say that acknowledging that I like pretty much everything he's ever done that I've seen, and that is 2017's Blade Runner 2049.
We didn't do that one already?
I didn't.
Big Ben hasn't done it?
I don't know.
No, you did, Rob.
Okay, well, I'm still recommending it.
But you can
That's
do
fine.
it again.
I know it's possibly a heretical statement to make, but I think I actually prefer it to Ridley Scott's original. And
That
it's
is heretical.
easily,
That's heretical.
it's
What is that?
Which
easily one of my
version of the
favorite.
original?
Shut up! I'm talking. It's easily one of my favorite looking movies of the 21st century. I could take a panel of any random frame and frame it in a museum. It looks so good. Blade Runner 2049 is currently streaming on Netflix and HBO Max.
That is heretical, though.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's
absolutely.
not a bad movie. But yeah, I knew I already recommended that one. Ryan, if you want to check our letterbox recommendations of justice,
Nope.
you will see what we've already recommended, so you can avoid this from happening again.
Wait,
Well,
so
if you're
Isaac,
going
You've
with
you,
done a
Jodorowsky's
few
Dune.
twice, but still, it's it's still movies that should be seen.
so Isaac, you said that Blade Runner was your favorite, but like, which version of it? Because there's so many different cuts.
Oh, I would usually go with the director's cut, but I feel like the best parts of it are actually in all the various versions. There's no, I don't feel like one version sticks out as somehow the only version that's true or right. I just tend to feel like the film itself is pretty much quality along the way.
I like the voiceover one.
I would probably tend to agree with that. I feel like the one that also implies the end that he is a oh my god, I forgot what they call them. A fake person is kind of the nice solution there, but I think they're right to leave it open to the audience to decide too. You don't have to solve every mystery in a film,
Yeah,
Oh, that's fair.
I like the voiceovers because it lends more to the detective kind of feel. It's just,
Yeah.
they were written
That film
very
is
quickly.
the film
You
of
can hear
all
how much
sci-fi
Harrison
films.
Ford hates doing it.
I
I was,
love that too. I love his
I
pain.
think the only one that even came close to actually doing a decent job in between that and its sequel would probably have been Dark City. That was a fairly decent idea, a controversial comment there, as doing that film noir sci-fi flavor. Because a lot of folks have tried that, and Blade Runner clearly got it down right, but a lot of the other ones in the meantime, not so much.
Yeah, but Dark
Hey,
City is a good
liking
one.
Dark City is not controversial on this podcast.
No.
That's a dope
No,
movie.
I almost
love that.
recommended it once, but I hadn't. It's still up for grabs.
There you go. Next time, Ryan. Next time, there's an open one. So I'll send us on home. I'm recommending another adaptation of a novel starring Swedish actor Rebecca Ferguson, and that's 2019's Dr. Sleep. This film does a tightrope walk between being both based on the Stephen King book and a stylistic companion to Stanley Kubrick's 1980 interpretation of The Shining, to which Dr. Sleep is the sequel. I think it does a pretty good job of finding the right balance between the two, but definitely the highlight of both the book and the movie is the antagonist, Rose the Hat, played here by Ferguson, who does her own tightrope walk between being terrifying and alluring. She's the leader of a group of quasi-immortal psychic vampires who feed off the powers of children, gifted with the shining, that old chestnut. And a now-grown Danny Torrance, played by Ewan McGregor, must stop her centuries-old reign of terror. So, hey, it's actually another story about people with psychic powers. So see how it ties in? Very nicely done. Ferguson probably just has that look. Dr. Sleep is currently streaming on HBO Max.
It was a surprisingly good adaptation. I really enjoyed the novel, but I thought the novel was a little too soft with how it ended, and I liked the edge that the movie gave it.
Yeah, and I mean, if they were going to do another movie, they had to try to follow up the Kubrick one stylistically. There was not really another choice. I don't think.
People would have revolted.
Yeah.
Or just not seen it.
Possible.
Probably the latter.
Yeah.
Which is actually what happened.
Oh, no!
I saw it.
That's true. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I saw it too, though. And
yeah,
I
I
did
saw it
like
in the
it.
theaters too. But
There you.
not
That
a lot of other
is.
people did.
That's 75% of the people I know. And
I'm
with
so
that,
sorry, Rob. I'm so sorry.
we are all at a show, but we want to thank our guest, Isaac Arthur, for joining us. Thank you so much, Isaac.
Glad to be on again.
We were going to
I'm
have
glad
you
to
back, and you're going to defend Moonfall. All right?
Moonfall.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
That's the challenge.
Suddenly you'll be
Said you
begging
didn't
for
like
Battlefield Earth,
gravity.
right?
Well, now you're gonna get it.
Exactly. And we hope everyone will join us again as well as the reels of justice keep turning.
Count it.
Sand.
Please follow us on Twitter at Reels of Justice, Instagram Reels of Justice, and Facebook.com/Reels of Justice.